Organize Me Radio, episode 96, Organizing What's Left Behind After a Loss. I'm Naeemah Ford Goldson. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Organize Me Radio. I'm Naeemah Ford Goldson, and today's guest is an after loss professional. Please welcome Rachel Donnelly. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Naeemah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I think this is a topic that's important for a lot of people to know about, dealing with your loved ones' things after a loss.
Right,
And this is something that you are well versed in.
right.
Can you tell us about AfterLight
Yeah,
and how you help families?
absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for having me and thank you for shining light. I use that word on purpose on a topic that many of us avoid, many of us, shy away from, but is the reason that I got into this. Um, I lost both of my parents at young ages and had to take care of an aging loved one and was an executor twice at the same time, unfortunately. And it catapulted me into the world of estate administration and the the various tasks that accompany that, and as well as the time frame that comes with that many people don't realize. It can very much be a full-time job for many after they've lost a loved one, especially if their loved ones had not communicated well beforehand, had not been organized beforehand. So the way we help clients is sort of serving as a quarterback, I'd say, for executors. So we come in serving side by side with an executor or the person, and I use that term very loosely, the person who is in charge of settling the estate. And that can vary from state to state, whether they had a will, whether they didn't. But we come alongside in a proxy coach and organizer capacity and helping the person who is settling the estate manage those unavoidable logistics of death and estate administration. So that's most of my work. That's about 60% of it. And then about 40% of it is helping individuals get their estates and legacies organized beforehand as they're going through maybe the estate planning process. Maybe it's been a while and they really want to look at their legacy, their estate in an organized manner to prep their executor for the job.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's great that you go through things with people, I guess, in preparation for it. So
Right,
it's
right,
easier on their loved ones,
right,
because oftentimes people just don't think in those terms. Maybe they think it's morbid. Maybe they don't want to think about their own
right,
mortality
right,
and just kind of avoid that. So when it comes to people who have lost a loved one and they're trying to figure out how to sort through their belongings, whether it's paperwork, whether it's heirlooms or things like that. Where do
right.
they even start?
Right. And I'd say that that's one of our biggest value adds is we come in with that lens and look at things because many times clients come to us and they say, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I don't know what's most important. So we're coming to them. A lot of times clients are referred to us or referred to me by either the attorney, the financial advisor, maybe an accountant, a real estate agent, and they're completely overwhelmed. So we're coming in and we're doing a very thorough intake of their loved ones' lives and looking at what they owned, what they owed, what maybe their will said based on, of course, the attorney's guidance. And then we're helping them to sort of triage, prioritize tasks, but first and foremost, to get organized, right? We're helping them to put together a detailed accounting of like I said, all of their accounts, what they owed, what they owned. And then looking at through a lens, okay, what needs to be done right now? What needs to be done after that? And then what can wait for down the road? So we're, like I said, triaging, prioritizing, and streamlining tasks for clients. Because as you said, it can be a very morbid subject. And I want to acknowledge that we're all uncomfortable with our own mortality. So let's not sit here and pretend that we're not. We are all uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to think about it. So then coming into this and looking at it with sort of an organized lens when somebody is in the grief process can really be that big value add for a client.
So, when it comes to figuring out what you should keep of your loved ones and what you should let go, I
Mhm.
know there are some people that have problems with just letting go of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
on the other hand, you have people that want to get rid of everything.
Yeah.
I noticed some people, everything can seem significant. And then some people, maybe they don't think things are significant enough. So,
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
people navigate through that?
Yeah, and it can be so tough. And those can be emotional landmines, right? After I lost both of my parents and had to go through my childhood home, our family home, which had been in my mother's family for over 120 years, it was just completely jam-packed of everything from my family, letters, mementos, newspaper clippings, right? The rice that was thrown on my parents at their wedding. Why my grandmother had held on to that, I will never know. But so every little thing was an emotional landmine, right? And also, we come from that baby boomer. My parents were baby boomers, who were products of the Depression, where they were taught everything is significant. You must hold on to everything. That's how you maybe built wealth, right? Things became more valuable. So coming from that, we're thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to hang on to this big piece of brown furniture. I've got to hold on to this china, this silver, this crystal, this china cabinet, because I have been told my whole life that it is significant, it is valuable. So I sort of help to step back with clients and look at things in sort of a piecemealed way and say, okay, let's look at things. Okay, what have you got here? What have you been told is significant? Let's maybe pull on that string, or what have you been told is valuable? Let me change that, right? What have you been told that's valuable? And let's verify that, right? What does the market demand? Does it need an appraisal? Is that something that needs to be done? And then let me leverage my the resources and the professionals I have and I know of to really verify that. And then what makes your heart sing? Are you holding on to something because of guilt or because it's something that really fits you, fits your lifestyle, uh, and is really important to you. Sometimes I think, and I know this because I went through this personally, and looking at everything and hanging on to things because of guilt and not necessarily because I liked it. I wanted to keep it and it fit my house or my lifestyle. So I try to look at things through that lens. And I can oftentimes look at a client and and I'm saying, are you holding on to that because of guilt or because your grandmother told you that you should keep that? Or is it because it's really important to you and it makes your heart sing?
So, when it comes to things, are there certain things that you should handle with extra care, like heirlooms, the letters that you mentioned that
Yeah,
were in your home for 120,
right,
120 years of stuff? Um,
right.
is there, or can we just get rid of it?
You can, right? I went through thousands of letters in my grandmother's house. And I sort of started to pick out some ones that maybe I wanted to frame, maybe I wanted to scan or memorialize and keep in a digital format, but maybe not keep in the physical form, right? And then there were some where, okay, this was when my mom wrote home from college in, the 1970s about what she had for dinner. That's probably not an important thing to keep. So again, I really tried to look introspectively and say, okay, what is this a hell yes or is this a hell no, right? Of me keeping this. And just because it's there, can I maybe select a couple to hang on to and then let the rest go? And, is there some sort of scarf that my grandmother had that I can take a photo of and frame it? Is there a plate that I love to eat breakfast off of when I was at my grandmother's house? Like I said, that I can take a photo of and frame it. Or I love the platform artifacts, which it's sort of where memories and things come together and you're able to tell the story, memorialize a thing, an item, and then if you want to get rid of it. So I have a lot of things that were from my family's homes that I've taken pictures of, told the stories of, and then let it go.
Hmm. Okay, got it. So my family dealt with a loss recently. My mom's father passed away
I'm
September
so
of this year, which is
sorry.
2024. Thank you. And my mom grew up with six sisters, so seven girls, all still living. And when it came to handling things for my grandfather, it seemed to be a lot of conflict. It seemed to be conflict
Right.
with his things, with funeral arrangements, things of that nature. What is the best way to work with family members to avoid conflicts?
Yeah. Well, I'd say first and foremost, if it's possible, if your grandfather would have been able to have those conversations beforehand, share what were his funeral wishes, what did he want to have happen, what was important to him, who did he want to have there, what music did he want to have played, or did he want nothing at all? Because those can be, I've seen so many conflicts between family members of someone saying, well, mom told me she wanted to be cremated, and the other sibling saying that she never said that. She wanted a traditional burial. So them, having that conversation beforehand, which is awkward, which is morbid, sharing your wishes, maybe, and if you don't want to have that conversation, writing it down somewhere, saying, here's what I want. And then, having those conversation about items, tangible personal property, heirlooms, maybe beforehand, with family together. I've also seen another platform called Fair Split that families can use to sort through items after someone has passed away, and they can assign a certain level of value to maybe say some sort of a mug that or a teacup that grandma drank out of, right? And they can sort of put in all of their chips and say, this is the most important thing to me, right? And then amongst other family members, they can assign other value to things. So then it can be more equitable and somebody maybe not getting the same value, but it's the value to them, right? And they're saying, no, I really want that grandma's pie plate. That was the most important thing. And they're sort of throwing in, all of their chips. But I think many times people get caught up in the number of things that somebody got, or so just because you're getting a certain number of things doesn't mean you're getting the same sort of value and end result. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that 40% of your work is kind of like, working with people, planning and
Right.
everything.
Right.
So what are some best practices for that? Like my grandfather in his last couple of years of life, he had dementia.
Right.
So he was, he was there, but then there were some things where he couldn't, he was hospitalized, I think for a year maybe.
Right.
So there were so many things that kind of played into that. Um,
Right.
But what could he have done? Is there a recommendation by a certain age where you should maybe put things together, or should you just do that anyway? Like at
Yeah.
my age, should I do that?
100%. I think if you are over 18, if you're breathing and have a pulse, we should all have a financial power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney so that, God forbid, if something were to happen, somebody would be able to pay my bills and advocate on my behalf should something happen to me medically. So those are several things. Of course, I have gone through the estate planning process and have a will. My husband and I have incorporated a revocable living trust as part of our strategy. Um, but there are things that one can do. While I'm very much an advocate of going through that sort of formalized estate planning process with an experienced trust and estate attorney, there are things we can all do that will make it easier. Telling your loved ones if you do have a will or if you don't, if you have a power of attorney, a healthcare, those advanced healthcare directives, where they are. So where are your important documents? What have you done? And like I said, where are they located? And how can your trusted contact get a hold of those? Keeping an up-to-date inventory or accounting of what you owe and what you own is so critical, because if someone passes away and you're trying to find their will, trying to find out, if they have any life insurance, if you had some sort of an inventory of their assets and their liabilities, it would make it so much easier for the person to be able to go to close, transfer, and archive accounts, right? And they're not having to search for a needle in a haystack. So, and knowing which ones are active and those sorts of things. So just having that communication of what you have, what you don't have. You won't imagine the number of clients who come to me and they say, I don't know whether my loved one had a will. And and I can't get into the safe deposit box at the bank until I become the executor. So it's sort of this chicken and egg situation of, well, we don't know if they had one, but I can't get into it because we don't know who might have been named as the executor. So no judgment if you're like, listen, I don't have anything, I'm not going to do it. Great. That makes maybe my search and my treasure hunt a little bit easier.
Gotcha. I had a client who had that issue. Her father had a will,
Right.
and but she had issues accessing the safe deposit box.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was, I think she couldn't find the key. So just
Yeah.
like having like knowing where those things were. And I believe
Right.
she found the key eventually, but it took maybe a couple of years before,
Yeah. And at
figuring that
that
out.
point, it's null and void, right? So a hidden will is as good as no will, right? If you can't access it, if you don't know where it is, then you've wasted money, right? Going through that process, paying an attorney to get that done if nobody knows where it is and how to access it.
Gotcha. Okay. So, what are some ways that people can honor a loved one's memory after they're gone?
Right. I mean, there are so many ways. And I really love sort of the way maybe the conversations are changing in our communities, that we are becoming more accepting of having these conversations, of maybe doing something, a little bit different. But, having a celebration of life, a that really encapsulates their memory, right? It doesn't always have to be this sad, solemn event, right? You can have a craft tequila tasting in Cabo San Lucas and an ash scattering party if you want. Like, is that really who you are, or who they were? I had a client in her 40s. She was about to have a major surgery, and she came to me to help her get organized and think through how she would best, put things together and share her wishes. She said, I don't want anybody to come to my memorial service in black. I want everybody to come in bright colors. I want there to be a cocktail upon their arrival. I want it to be on a Caribbean island, right? And that really encapsulated her memory, right? Who she was. Um, so those are some really, great and different ways to honor, our loved ones. I've made a lot of gifts to different organizations in my mom's memory that I think would have been really important to her. My mother was from Eastern Tennessee, and a lot of those communities were devastated with, during Hurricane Milton. So I gave some charitable gifts in her honor to those organizations to really memorialize her, because that community, that region was so important to her. So I think that there are ways that we can continue to do that. I always cook my mom's favorite foods at Thanksgiving, because she loved Thanksgiving. And so those are continued traditions that I'm having with my kids. So I'm weaving those into our everyday life, where she's not missing at the table. She is missing at the table, but we're still honoring her. She loved gravy and mashed potatoes. We're always making sure we're talking about that at the Thanksgiving table. So there are different ways I think that we can bring them into our everyday life, that doesn't have to be more morbid and solemn and necessarily very sad. It can be fun. We can really have that nod to them in a meaningful way.
How can someone know when they are emotionally ready to start going through their loved ones' things? I know
Yeah,
for my mom and her sisters, my mom was a bit overwhelmed. So
yeah,
my sisters and I kind of stepped in and said, okay, we need to do
right,
this, we need to do that, we need to get this done.
right.
Um, have you seen it where people maybe just can't get out of that space where they can actually do something? And when should they seek professional help when it comes to the logistics of everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody should seek help, whether that is from someone like me as an after loss professional, but also with other family members, with friends, and saying, hey, can you come sit with me and go through this? I think it's important to take breaks, to really look introspectively and say, am I feeling completely overwhelmed and shrouded in my grief? And do I need to take a break? Right? When I work with clients and they're overwhelmed with the physical items, I say, is there any rush right now? Right? Do you need to get out of the apartment, or were they in a senior living community that they need to turn that over? Or is this something that we can take with time, right? We can do at your own pace, in a timeline that allows you to honor your grief journey and what you're going through, and not feeling like you've got to rush through this and throw things out and get the house cleaned out. Can we take our time? So I'm trying to understand what their timeline is so that we can best fit that. But I think the hard part, the rubber really hits the road after the funeral has happened, after the casseroles have stopped arriving. And that's when things get hard. And that's when you should really look in and say, I need help going through all of this, getting organized. Because that's when people, they've gone to the funeral, they've maybe helped when somebody was sick. But after that funeral has happened, that's when things can really get tough, for those who are settling the estate.
So, are there any rituals or processes that you recommend someone going through, so it's, I guess, easier for them to let go?
Yeah. I always tell people, okay, pencils down after the loved one has passed away. Let's take a pause, right? Um, the tragedy has happened, right? Not everything has to be done right now, all at once, at this minute. Let's take a pause. Let's get organized. Let's pull together paperwork. Let's come up with a plan of action instead of this frenzied, I got to make all these phone calls. I got to call the bank. I've got to get the life insurance policy. I've got to cancel the Netflix account, right? Let's just take a pause and get organized before we act, and making sure that you are taking care of yourself. You're hydrating, you're eating, you're sleeping, right? You're maybe seeking out a therapist, right? You're going through those things to take care of yourself, because it's a huge burden to someone who's grieving, and it's mentally exhausting, it's physically exhausting. So let's take a pause. And I said, let me shoulder some of this for you to get you organized. I'm going to keep you updated, and we're going to get through this in the timeline that makes sense for you and your loved ones, estate and their life.
Rachel, this has been some very great information, and I know that this will be helpful to all who listen to the podcast or watch this episode. I want to switch gears just a little, because every person that I have on the podcast, there's a couple questions that I love to ask. And the
Okay.
first one is, what is your favorite organizing product or productivity
Mm.
tool?
I mean, one of my favorite organizing products, I think I mentioned, is artifacts, and organizing the things and the memories. I'm also a big fan. I know you've had Nat Robinson, Trustworthy
Yeah.
is one of my big favorite tools for individuals, either getting prepared, organizing their own estate. So that's a really, really great one. So I think that, those are two great tools that any of us can use now to not only get organized for down the road and prep our executor, but to help us in life management now, right? To maybe declutter, get rid of some things that don't serve us. Um, so they not only help you now, but help you down the road. Using a password manager has changed my life. And that is also a great tool for those who are going through their accounts and what's open, what's active. That's a big aspect. A blind spot of a state organization is people not knowing what online accounts their loved one may have. So using a password manager to really help you sort of audit and inventory all of your accounts. I use Dashlane and I love the interface, and I don't have to remember any passwords, and they auto generate, and it's awesome.
Okay, that's perfect. I need to get on board with that because I can't remember any of my passwords.
No, I think I read a stat. The average American spends 11 hours a year resetting passwords. So it
Wow.
auto generates, it auto captures, and auto stores your passwords across all of your devices. And I love it. So that has been a game changer for me,
Okay,
personally and professionally.
got it. Okay, so we're going to put our passwords in password managers. Got
Exactly.
it.
Yes.
The final question is, what's your greatest professional achievement?
Oh, gracious. I mean, I think the fact that we're women who have started businesses and have kept them alive and going. Now I'm 5 years strong, I think is a huge accomplishment. I turned in the first draft of my manuscript for my first
Oh,
book.
congratulations.
Thank you. So that was an accomplishment and something that had been on my bucket list, that I've done that I can't believe I've just done. So it's a sort of a tapestry of my stories of working with clients, and my personal experiences with loss that I hope will give the everyday person more tools in their toolbox and reasons, to get their affairs in order.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today and letting us know a little bit more information about dealing with the loss of a loved one. Can you tell us how everyone can find out more information about you and about Afterlight?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about our services, we help clients all over the US. You can go to myafterlight.com and find me on Instagram at myafterlight, on LinkedIn, Rachel Donnelly. If you are interested in becoming an after loss professional like me, I have helped to co-found the professional organization that offers training for those looking to to join this career or add this as a service. And that is afterlosspros.com. And that's called Professionals of After Loss Services.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to tune in next time for an all new episode.